How's it going, boys? CASPR-AirTaxKing back at it again with a new Broken Arrow PTE Broken Arrow video on the channel. And this one is going to be a news update because the devs just dropped a massive change, PTE change log into the game. Huge changes to many units, actually reverting some changes that they did in previous patches and adding new functionality for units that we have not seen in the game before, and we're going to be here discussing every single bit of it. So I'm just going to read through the change log from top to bottom, and we'll talk about it, each change, and I'll show each unit that has been changed in the game here. So they go over a few exploits that were fixed. So the invisible unit exploit, which I thought they already fixed in the main game, has been fixed again, apparently. They added a new objective zone and spawn layout for the map Frontiers. We'll have to check that out later. Incorrect unit setup in the default deck has been fixed. Okay, cool. And then spotting retention penalty against targets inside buildings has been restored. So infantry inside structure are now harder to lose sight of once spotted from long range. So, okay. That kind of makes sense. I think that has to do with a bug, kind of a bug in the game where, and I've seen this happen multiple times, where your unit starts shooting it. The unit spots something, but you can't actually see it, and they're shooting at the building, and you know there's a unit in there intuitively because they're shooting there, but you don't actually see the marker for the unit on the map. So it's kind of tricky. I guess they're just trying to undo that, and just punish you more, I guess, for having a unit that's kind of overextended, which I don't necessarily disagree with. So then they go into ground vehicles. Here is the first main thing they're talking about. The frontal heat armor on all tanks has been reduced by 10%. So let's have a gander at a tank. I don't remember the values for tanks off the top of my head, and I'm not sure if this would be... Yeah, that doesn't look quite right. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I don't remember the values off the top of my head, so I can't reference them. But, yeah, whatever. Yeah, tanks are obviously very dominant right now, so a little bit of a nerf like that doesn't really hurt them. I think that's really meant to, you would think, potentially increase the effectiveness of shoulder-launched rockets, but as you're going to see later on, that's probably not what they're intending. They reset, or they restored the AMPV's transport capacity. So this is here in armored, and it is the AMPV, which is probably right in front of me. Yep. This is the big boy. So this was nerfed down to 9 men. It has been restored to 12, thankfully. I don't know why they nerfed it down. I thought they probably just trying to balance it because they gave armored a really big buff because they increased the size of these squads from like 5 and then 6, or from 5 to 6, and then now it's 7. But the knock-on effect of moving this down to 9 was that it had synergy with basically nothing except for like airborne, like the airborne infantry unit. That's a 9-man unit. But the problem was that, here, let's keep this up actually. The problem was that it completely destroyed the synergy with this unit, Delta Force. This is a 12-man. This is an infamous combo, I suppose, in the US meta, but it's so necessary. Delta Force door kickers and the AMPV was a huge part of that. There was no reason really to get rid of this from the game because it's strong, but it's not like overpowered or anything. So yeah, restoring that is definitely for the best. So they've added new functionality to some ground vehicles, specifically in the recon tab. So let's go check that out. These are vehicles. So which decks are affected? We'll start here. So let's just read it off here. Infantry transport capability has been added for the following scout and ISR vehicles. So there's 2-seaters now in the BRDM that's in Coastal. The BRDM2 used to have nothing. Now it can carry 2 dudes, which is cute. The BRM1K Korshun, I believe that is in Mech. Yes, here it is. Korshun, 2 men. The IFAV, that is in Airborne, right? Or Marines? Marines. That's in the Recon tab for Marines. That's not Marines. Here we go. This can carry 2 guys now. As you can see, again, none of these had any transport capacity. So another one in airborne is the recon airborne. This is going to be really juicy. Being able to carry the I believe they have no airborne snipers 3-man unit, but that with these guys, scout snipers being able to go in this unit, that is really, really, really cool. Really cool. And then the next one is actually the Guardian and Striker. This unit very rarely gets used, I think, even though it is actually quite underrated. So now being able to carry 2 men, that again pairs really well with Marines. I'm trying to think of other 2-men recon units for America. I don't think there's many, to be honest. Um, there really aren't that many Recce's more than 2. Yeah, there's basically none. So this synergy works really well for Marines. It's another buff for Marines, as if they needed one. But there's not just 2-seaters. They've added 3-seaters and 4-seaters, and the 3-seaters are here. This is really nice buff for VDV, actually, come to think of it. So the Sardamat, which is here, carries 3 men, so that's direct synergy with the VDV Spetsnaz. 115-mile-an-hour transport. That is, sorry, 130. And you can give it a Metis launcher, which gives it visual range, or just a grenade launcher and a heavy machine gun. That is a really nice buff for VDV. Again, not that they needed it. And then another 3-man transport. This is a really cool one. Is actually the fist, the B fist. This has 2,400 meters visual range and now can carry 3 men, which means it can carry its own recon unit in the cavalry scout, but it can also carry, most critically, rangers, snipers, which is a 3-man unit. So that is even more synergy for armored SOCOM, which is one of America's best decks. And again, it can carry any 3-man unit. And just to compare it again with the Recon Bradley, so these are your 2 main boys, and you can see like there's give and take for both. The M3A4 has less visual range, but it carries supplies. They both have access to smoke and B-Fist active protection, or excuse me, Iron Fist active protection. They both have smoke, but this one has a laser pointer. So some really interesting give and take. Of course, this one has a toe, this one does not. So there's some really interesting variation here, and it lends to more variety in this game, and that's what we want. This is a really cool change. And then there is 4C recon units, and that is the BRDM-3 Buenost. Let's see, that I believe is a motorized. Here we go, 4 men. So this can carry like PDSS. This can carry basically any Russian recon unit that's not like a recon infantry unit. So except for VMF. That's a really nice change. The Machina, which I believe is in Coastal, 4-man unit that can carry PDSS now as well, can carry its own native recon infantry. Then there's also, this is a nice change. This is one I bet guys like LDE will love, being able to carry 4 men with a machine gun on a Bradley with armor and this much. Oh, maybe it's this one actually. Sorry, it is this one, excuse me. So you already have this one, can carry 4 men. But then you have this one, so let's see the difference here. So this, it doesn't look like it's really different. Yeah, it's basically the same unit. But this one actually has more visual range. So that's actually pretty nice. Cannot be airdropped, has no supplies. So, again, kind of some variety, but you actually have to make a decision in terms of what you actually want to bring. So that's it for the... Oh, actually, no, there's one more, actually a really critical one here, is the JLTV, or the MATV, as it's known in this deck, can now carry 4 men. And there's not a whole lot of options with SOCOM, but you could carry these guys. I mean, if you want it to be a psychopath, you could go Airborne, Recce, but also the main one's going to be Green Berets. Green Berets and this thing is going to be a cute little combo. A very cute combo, in fact. Yeah, that could be really, really nice. There's not a whole lot of 4-men units on the US side outside of the recon, but yeah, Airborne, Recce, or Punishers, or Green Berets. It's going to be a nice combo. They also added ignore cover values for a bunch of tanks or a bunch of different let's see rounds. So there's a few shells for like the Tauros, the 105 millimeter Hesh round, which is trying to remember where that is. Can you look that up? No, that's okay. Or maybe you can. Yeah, I wish the search function was a little more detailed like that. The M830, that's 120 millimeter. So that would actually, that's a buff for, I believe it's an Abrams round, no? Yeah, there it is. So that's a 20% buff for that unit for ignore cover. The Temnik DM111, I'm not familiar with some of these. 125 millimeter heat. So there's not many units that would carry that. Maybe maybe these guys. This is 125 million. Yeah, Telnik and Heat. Yep, there they are. Those got buffed to 30%. And then for me personally, this is a change I'm really loving, is the change here to the Sheridan. This Heat round now has 40% ignore cover. That is so awesome. This unit is already super underrated. Didn't get a price increase. I mean, this thing's just a machine. I mean, it's so underrated. Having that ATGM, and people complain about it. Oh, it always fires first. Just turn it off. You can turn it off down here when you're in the game. Just turn off the ammo and it won't use it. And then you have the option for it. It's 1400 meters range, 1500 meters range. Yeah, 1500 meters range. It's really good. It's really, really good. And then the next big change here is the return of the king. Spec Ops players rejoice. Armored Spec Ops players rejoice. As you can see, we're in Spec Ops. Boom. The Guardian has returned to Spec Ops. And this is a justifiable change because Airborne already has three fantastic helicopters in the Longbow, the Apache, and the Kiowa. Critically underrated, the Kiowa. Guardian needed a heavy helicopter like this. Yes, I get it. There's the DAP, but the DAP is not a Guardian. Look at the health. It's night and day. It's not even close. This unit, it was so clutch for SOCOM for so long. They took it away from them, and now it is back, and hopefully it is here to stay. The other helicopter change is to Coastal. They nerfed the reload time and resupply time on the Katran with the cruise missile. This was a minute, and now it is a minute and 1/2, 90 seconds. Still, you're getting a full reload out of this thing in 3 minutes, and if you have two of them, that's really useful. That's still really useful. There's a ton of utility there. So infantry squads, they've made quite a few changes. They have added two new custom loadouts to, we're going to go here first to motorized. So you have, spoiler alert, here it is, Motopechota AGS. It's usually this with the PTO Metis, double Metis, not a bad squad defensively. But then you have this Motopechota AGS. This is more of an offensive-minded unit. They get an AGS-17 grenade launcher, and they get an RPG-7 with 3 RPG rounds, which is nice. This is something you can actually deploy on the front line. I think it's clearly better than this. Yes, you have less rockets, but I'd rather have the infantry support here because you're really not going to be yeah, you're going to have line infantry, but you're not going to be using this line infantry. You're probably going to be using Spetsnaz GRU. You're going to be using Morskaya Pechota. Like, there's so many other infantry units that are better than Moto Pechota, and this is kind of overpriced for what it is, but yeah, whatever. That is one change, and then they have again buffed armored, and you can see the price values are different. We're going to talk about that in a second, but the main one here is Mech Rifleman Dragon. It's usually this MMG squad, which is pretty good, honestly. It's kind of underrated. Only 2 rockets though. People hate that, so they took away an MMG and they gave him the Dragon 3, M47 Dragon 3, which is kind of underused, but it's not bad. It's better than something like a Metis, at least a single Metis. And this is a really cute upgrade. 5 points. Actually, I think that's kind of cheap for what it is. I was expecting that to be like more like 75 or 80, but this is finally some sort of standoff capability, infantry standoff capability, aside from cavalry scouts in the armored deck or spec. And they fixed the HP values for all of the 7-men units. As you can see, they are no longer 30, they are 35, and they gave them price increases. So MMG was 55 to 65, and now this is 70. Mech is all the way up to 80 for the AA unit, and then the riflemen are up to 60. Engineers, I think, were always 60. I'm kind of surprised I didn't get buffed up a little bit too, but this is a really viable squad now looking at it. Yeah, it's really good. Good armor, good health. Yeah, small D's, nice. And yeah, that's actually something that they're going to talk about in a second here. Yeah, it's a little cheap, honestly. I don't like. Hmm. So we're going to talk about it right here. Sorry. So the weapon stats. So they changed weapon stats across the board for shoulder launched rockets. Maximum range for all anti-personnel weapons, excluding. It was supposed to be the Marine small, as if Marines needed another buff. And again, I'm a Marine main. I love them, but they don't need another buff. You have Raider CQC. You have the law that's down to 400, but you can see that Schma is 500. But clearly they missed the memo here because you have this guy, which is also 500. So there's not a single Russian that has more than 500, which is kind of disappointing. We could go through looking through them like that's 400, that's 400, 400, 400. When I think it was 500, right? Yeah, I'm not sure I love that change too much because I mean, like the Russian ones are just better, frankly, but SSO, that's down to 400. I'm not sure that changed. Sturmabiki 400. No, no. Okay, so they still have some capacity because you can use these RPG 7s uh, against infantry. So Russia does have that going for them at least. But again, this is a really weak round compared. It's 20 by 4 versus 45 by 8.5. It's not even close. It's not even close. But they do get considerably more missiles. So if you keep them at range, they'll be really useful. But again, armor these are two totally different units. Two totally different units. But yeah, I don't. And then I guess Spetsnaz is 400. Yeah, interesting. And then I'll just again post a screenshot. We're gonna have screenshots all throughout the video, of course, but this screenshot's most important because it's just reducing a ton of penetration values for different missiles and rockets, which is kind of good in a sense. Let's see. So yeah, here is the Hellfire. So the Hellfire did get nerfed. So they're just nerfing helicopters across the board generally, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, Kiowa with the Hellfires. That did not get nerfed. So which Hellfire is that? The AGM 144 Hellfire 2. Is that frontal penetration? Sorry, what unit is that on? Hellfire L. No, maybe like it's a Marine helicopter that has it. Oh, you know what it is? It's probably the one on the Ghost Rider. Yes. Yes, that is it. That's so random. I don't know why they would nerf that. That's so random. But yeah, I think a lot of this is to increase vehicle survivability against these thermobaric and really infantry focused rocket rounds. But then they also nerfed the lemur. And I did some testing, and I'll put an overlay of a video here. The lemur missile would one tap a Bradley. Um, the lemur missile one taps Bradleys. At least it used to, because this was 110 or 100. Now it's down to 55. It'll still critically damage it, but this is a pretty big nerf to the Mikhalich. I'm not sure I'm a big fan of it personally, but what are you gonna do? We'll see how it plays out. They also nerfed one of the worst the worst special forces unit in the game, arguably. Even more, as if they needed to be nerfed even further. And that is Estov. This got reduced. That was way higher. The B300. Oh, no, 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 no. Never mind. At least I'm not. The C90, where is that? Yeah, there it is. It got reduced from 200 to 105. So this is an even further nerf for this guy. Just. Yeah, and the B300 also got nerfed. So it's kind of like, I don't know what they're doing here. The SRAW got a penetration debuff. Because I thought the C90 was supposed to be multifaceted or multi-use. But whatever. They could have made this interesting by giving this, it's a special forces unit. You can give it some range, but no. The devs said, no, we're not doing that. So what are you going to do? And then the last major change is to the air defense systems. They finally buffed them. They said, you know what? We're going to keep the overkill mechanic as it is. We're going to increase the intervals between launches so that they're not as oppressive. And then we are going to increase ranges. We're going to make them what they used to. Like, it seems like 90, like 80%, 85% of what they used to be. So, I mean, we'll just go straight to the ante. They did not bring back one hit. They did not bring back one hit, but they increased range, and that was the absolute least they should have done. The absolute least. So let's see how that plays out. Where is my ante? I believe it's... Ah, yes, here. Here it is. That's 300 ante. So you can see the ranges look absolutely bizarre now. 2350. But it's times 3. So you multiply that by 3, and you get 7.8 kilometers, which is not the full 9K it used to be, but it's nearly 8K, and that's really good. Ooh, okay, so here's some variety here. Here's some variety here, and I like this. I like this. So long range SAMs, as you can see, and this is a long range SAM. So this is long range SAM. The Favorit S300 is also a long range SAM. This is classified as a long range SAM. And then the Pack 2 in Marines. The Few and the Proud. Pack. Here it is. So these are all long range SAMs. So you see 2350, 2350, and then they have times 3 range at high altitude, times 3 range at high altitude. What they're doing here to differentiate them is, let's compare that to Coastal S350 Vityaz. This is a medium range guy, lower range, and it gets times 3 at high altitude, but this one gets times 2. It gets times 2 at low altitude. So that is a really interesting change. That means these sorts of high missile count, shorter range SAM systems are going to be really effective against things like cruise missiles. They're going to be effective against low-flying aircraft, but they won't have the same range to hit planes. That's where the long rangers come in, because their firing interval has been increased considerably, but the ranges have been increased. And again, the idea is that you want to deploy as many of them as possible for the overkill mechanic to kick in. So long range systems, I feel like they should have brought back one hit for the long rangers, considering how big the interval is. I feel like they'll have to do that. I don't mind. The ranges, I think, are good. I think 8K range is good. There's a lot of things to like there. But yeah, I don't know. I do like the changes to medium rangers. Like, that makes sense. They also buffed the Iris. So now the Iris is actually pretty usable. Baltic. The sham of a deck. It's really the redheaded stepchild. It's actually very underrated for what it is. But Estov getting nerfed again. Like, you have to take Zaliu guy now. As much as it pains me to say it, because I do love Estov. At least I loved them when they came out at first. And then people realized they were garbage. So you can see NASMs here, and they do ER. So they get a range reduction, but these can only target low altitude. These are high altitude. Multiply that by 3. This is 1800 versus 1850. Multiplied by 3. You get around 5,000, 5,500 for both of these guys, which is pretty useful. This is obviously going to be very useful against medium range. Yeah, because that's the thing. They're both considered medium range. So the NASMs you really should be taking, and the helicopter, the anti-helicopter designation, because it's pretty good. 1.25 is 3,000-ish. Yeah. So I do like that they're addressing the air defense situation. I still think the long rangers should have one tap if they're going to leave the ranges like this, and especially if they're going to increase the firing intervals to that range, or to that length. But generally, I like the changes. All these changes are really good. The changes to some of these missiles is interesting. The Lemur one, that's a big nerf to the Mikhalic. That was a one tap to Bradley's. It is no longer one tap to Bradley's. Big oof, big shame. But all the other changes I like. I really do. Adds a lot of variety to the game, especially with the infantry transport. option for the recon units, the recon transports. Yeah, overall, I'm really loving these changes. Not perfect. We're going to get a game in here in a minute to see how well these changes actually translate in-game. But as it does for this video, as it stands for this video, that's going to be all she wrote. If you guys liked this video and you want to be kept up to date on all the news, all the breaking news for Broken Arrow, please feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment down below. Even if you have nothing nice to say, ring the notification bell. This is Casper, AirTaxKing, egressing out.